Good evening, everyone. We have a lot to talk about. First, the Letecia Stauch trial. The defense begins their case in chief. We have an update on the Lori Vallow matter. Can you believe it? Alec Murdoch admits he may have lied to the insurance company. Yeah. A fairy tale wedding didn't quite turn out to be that for a bride. And then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. Yes, it's our Tuesday night live show, and we did the intro like we do a daily show, and that's frankly because, well, I was so busy today, I didn't have a chance to do the regular show, but we've had a lot to bring you, for, no doubt, when it's been kind of a crazy schedule for me. First, we've had the Letecia Stauch trial, right? Oh my gosh. We'll get to that, but that's like watching the Hindenburg catching on fire. It was painful this afternoon. We'll talk about that. Obviously, the Lori Vallow trial continues. The prosecution putting on their experts, the pathologists, to explain why and how Tammy Daybell passed away. And then we have Alec Murdoch. Wow, he lied. Can you believe it? Alec Murdoch lied. Who would have thought? You know, we brought you that trial from beginning to end. And would you believe anything that Alec Murdoch says? Then we have a horrible story about a bride that got hit by a drunk driver. Yeah, terrible. On a wedding day. That's terrible. And then obviously our dumb criminal of the day. And this guy deserves to be our dumb criminal, no doubt. So before we get started, everyone, you know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below. Now, on our live shows, we don't ask for super chats, but I can tell you it does help highlight the super chat question. So if you want your question answered, that's the way to do it. And also remember, hit that little bell so they receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content, okay? And then finally, remember, you can listen to us anytime and any of our past episodes on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, I don't know if it's just because we've been putting up the audio from the Lori Vallow trial, but our podcast downloads have just skyrocketed over the last month or so. So I appreciate everybody doing that as well. Now, like we do on our regular show, you got to pay the bills, okay? Go to crimetalksearch.com if you haven't done so already, okay? This is, think about all the little subscriptions that you have on your phone that you don't think about. I know I went through and cleared all that stuff out, okay? But one subscription you want, and that is to be able to check people out. So go to crimetalksearch.com, hit the link. It's going to take you to a background subscription service. And when you have that background subscription service, you can do a background search on anyone in the United States. You can do as many searches as you'd like, and you can cancel at any time. So whether you want to keep it so you can, search as many people, I'm telling you, myself, the lovely Miss Kristen, somebody comes up, let's do it. We use it in my law firm all the time. It is a good starting point for further investigation. It's a good tool, and you're going to get information that's going to have criminal history. Do people have judgments against them? Are they broke? Why do they really like you? All these things you need to know and find out about people. So go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription. Okay. So let's first get to the Letecia Stauch trial. Okay. I don't know what day we're on Letecia Stauch. It's 15 days too long, I think. But it was painful. Okay. Things aren't going well when your expert witness is supposed to be there at 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. to start testifying, right? Yeah, that's what you would think. She shows up at 1:30. Everybody's waiting at 1:30. Including me, because I got to get some work done, but I got it playing in the background and I am waiting, and she's still late. The good doctor shows up She is going to testify as to this associative disorder that she believes that Letecia Stauch was going to, that gives her a defense to her case. Now, the good doctor, she graduated from medical school, I think, in 1962. So that means she's been practicing medicine for 60 years, and which means she's probably over 80, 85. Now, don't get me wrong. I hope I'm getting around when I'm in my 80s like that. Hopefully, I still have all my faculties for myself. And I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, right? We want them to have all their stuff. Now, the prosecution rested. Okay, we all knew that was going to happen. Then the defense is going to call their witness. Now, this doctor is going to be the one that gets up there and says that Leticia Stauch had such a tragic and traumatic childhood, not to mention a couple of instances as it relates to some head trauma, that therefore she suffered traumatic brain injuries, and therefore she cannot be held criminally responsible because, well, that's just the way, that she's not responsible. Okay. So like I said, it got off to a bad start when your expert witness shows up 4 hours late. And then she basically shows up late to the time that she wasn't supposed to, that she was supposed to be there. So Dr. Rhonda Nidenhauser, she originally testified I guess it was yesterday, that Leticia Stauch was diagnosed, or she diagnosed Leticia Stauch with generalized anxiety and recommended some prescription medications. Okay, not that big of a deal. But the doctor, Dr. Dorothy Lewis. Now, she's an expert in serial killers and dissociative identity disorder. And it sounds like the defense found out about her from watching a documentary about the evaluations, or about her life. And she testified that she believed that during the examination of Leticia, that she switched into different identities. Now, Dr. Lewis said dissociative identity disorder is frequently the result of childhood abuse, and testified she didn't believe, but she knows what happened to Gannon, and that she was not sane at the time of the crime. Now, I'm paraphrasing this, but basically the doctor was saying, hey, she's had such a traumatic childhood. She was abused physically. She was abused sexually. And because of that, she would basically disassociate herself from the circumstances as a coping mechanism. And the doctor tried to explain that, maybe these things are there for different circumstances, and certain things can kind of trigger them. Okay. And I'm probably being too simplistic in that, but that's basically it. Okay. And it was just weird. Okay. Now, there was a hearing held first thing this morning and a little in the afternoon. Apparently, the defense attorneys met with Dr. Lewis Sunday, and there was a conversation. And so she was prohibited from mentioning anything about this softball injury that also was a traumatic brain injury, because it wasn't in her report. The judge held her very strictly to what was in her report. Now, the prosecutors started their cross-examination, and they were chewing her up and spitting her out. It looked uncomfortable for not only Leticia Stauch, but for the defense attorneys as well. And the prosecution has quite a bit of time to go. I could tell they were kind of stalling towards the end, like, Judge, hey, we're about 10 minutes in, 10 minutes remaining in the afternoon. We could just go ahead and break. Judge's like, no, let's go for another 5. And then the prosecutor said that we will, have all the video that they're going to play tomorrow. Now, remember, this doctor had 14 hours of interview with Letecia Stauch. Her attorney was present. The prosecution cross-examined her in regards to that, as to why did you have the defense attorneys there? I'm sorry if I misspoke. The defense attorneys there, and basically why she positioned people, 1, for her safety, but 2, to make sure that the defense attorney wasn't in any way trying to influence anyone in any way. Now, here's how do I say this? I get that the defense attorneys in this case have a very, very difficult client. And even today, the judge admonished Letecia Stauch for touching the computer equipment. That basically, he said this: don't move furniture around in my house. Like, the monitors are there for a reason. All the technical stuff's there. And if you move something, it's going to break and you can't do it. So clearly, I don't think the judge likes Letecia Stauch. Most of the time, if you've watched the trial, she's been trying to hide over there in the corner. Then she couldn't do that because at one point she was, using a finger moment to some of the family members. So the judge made her sit between her 2 attorneys. And sometimes she's had her head down. She just looks like a psycho woman right now. She's got this hair, and it's like she's trying to use it to, like, cover her up, to hide herself from everybody. And maybe that's just me, but that's my opinion. That's what it looks like. And she's just got this look on her face, like, oh. And I don't know if she thinks she's trying to help herself by looking crazy, or is she hurting herself? I'm going to vote for, let's show of hands for those playing at home. Show of hands. Who thinks she's hurting herself by trying to look crazy? Me. Okay. They should have dressed her up into nice little pigtails and look like, this, nice lady, even though she's not, because she admitted that she killed Gannon Stauch. Bottom line. Look at all the hands in the stats. Yes, she's hurting herself. She's hurting herself. Clearly hurting herself. And, so now the big thing is, I don't know how long the prosecution's going to go, but it sounds like they are loaded for bear. They are going to be ready. They're getting all their video queued up, and they're going to question the good Dr. Lewis. Now, here's the thing. Dr. Lewis seems like a nice woman. And I'm sure, kind of back in her prime, that she was kind of the go-to. You help a couple people escape, the death penalty, life without parole, all that kind of good stuff. I get it. I've never heard of her. I think if I was the defense attorney and had a situation where I needed to hire an expert, I don't think that Dr. Lewis would be the one that I would want. She seems very nice. She seemed a little disoriented, a little scatterbrained, just a little bit. I couldn't recall all the facts. I mean, you're testifying in a homicide trial. As an expert witness, you should know that file inside and out and know whether you got it from your 14 hours of interviews or was information you're relying upon from somebody else. She couldn't distinguish a lot of times in there, but the best way to describe it would be, it was like watching the Hindenburg coming to the ground on fire, right? For those unfamiliar, it's the blimp that blew up and everybody, people died. That's what it reminded me of. I was trying to hold out hope. The evidence is overwhelming that Leticia Stauch killed Gannon Stauch. But I'm saying, hey, I'm going to keep an open mind. I was a little skeptical of the whole dissociative identity disorder. just given the level at which she was able to lie afterwards. But the good doctor kind of explained, well, that's kind of, once again, a coping mechanism. The bad, and what was it? Maria, I think, was one of the personalities. She had several personalities, the good Leticia, the bad Leticia, the violent Maria. At one point she thought she was even speaking Russian, I think, in her. Sounds Russian. I don't know. I mean, I know we've all read stories about it. There's always that one case. They're like, oh, they have all these different personalities. I don't remember them ever being dropped on their head. I mean, lots of people go through trauma in their life, but they don't go around killing young boys. They just don't do it. And so the defense, and don't get me wrong, I saw a lot of comments today. These defense attorneys are terrible. Oh my God, how can they do this? Oh my God. Listen, the defense attorneys are doing their job. They have a legal and ethical obligation to zealously represent their client, and that's what they're doing. They have explored all defenses in this case, and obviously they determined that her stories were all lies and complete fabrications. There's not like there's a self-defense. It's not really an identity case. Well, I guess so. Which one did it, right? So remember, that's why I said early on, Leticia Stauch has admitted that she killed Ganesh Stauch because it was not guilty by reason of insanity, which is simply, well, you're saying I did it, but I was insane, that I couldn't form the requisite mental intent to knowingly do what they're accused of doing. And so the defense attorneys have an obligation. They have to look at this and say, hey, obviously they've had a couple of previous evaluations where they tried to go NGRI, and the doctor's evaluator said, no, we just don't see it. She's a narcissist, probably has some anxiety issues, but it's not anything that rises to this particular level as it relates to identity dissociation disorder, and saying that she's NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. And remember, here in Colorado, if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, you don't go home. You go to the state mental health hospital where they can treat you and keep you, well, up to your natural life. If you're convicted of first-degree murder or not guilty of first-degree murder, you don't get to go home. You don't get a free pass. Leticia Stauch would probably die in the prison, the state hospital, right? Remember years ago, we used to have the hospital for the mentally insane. That was all the people that were crazy. They didn't have all the medication, so you couldn't fix them like you can today. So that's where she would go. So Dr. Lewis didn't do her any help today, in my opinion. It got even worse on cross-examination. The doctor seemed confused, began arguing somewhat with the prosecutor in this case that was doing it. And I can't remember his name. God, why can't I remember his name? Because he used to be the elected district attorney in Adams County. Former, I'm going to find his name real quick. Dave Young. Dave Young was up there doing the prosecution. God, I can't remember his name. Dave Young. He used to be the elected DA in Adams County. He originally was from El Paso, came up to Adams County years ago, which is the northern part of the metro area here. Was the elected DA for 8 years, left under some scandal. We'll just leave it at that. And then he went back to El Paso County, where he's doing the cross-examination of Dr. Lewis. So let me know what you think. I think it was question. Scott, can Dr. Lewis quit and not show tomorrow? If she did not show, or maybe she showed up late, the judge could say, I'm going to strike her testimony, and therefore the jury could not consider it. And then there would be no defense instruction for not guilty by reason of insanity in any way. So that, I guess that's a possibility. And remember, the defense attorneys were instructed, ordered by the court, not to talk to her about any of her testimony. Now, I don't know if you heard right at the end of it, you could hear her kind of in the hot mic saying he lied. And so things are getting feisty. She may be up there in age and years, but I think she has still got a little fight in her, to say the least. Now, something comes up quite a bit. I see it in the comments quite a bit. People are like, oh, NGRI is terrible. This, it shouldn't be a defense, blah, blah, blah. Well, every state has some form of it. They call it different things. Maybe you can't raise it at trial, but if they determine at sentencing that you have a mental disease, like in the Lori Vallow case, then you can consider that for mitigation and sentencing purposes. Here, you have a trial. You basically, kind of admit through it. The first 2 weeks were nothing but a long, slow guilty plea. Here's all the evidence. It was so bad, even Letecia Stauch had to put her head down and be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I am a horrible human being, right? And then the defense gets to put in their evidence, right? This is the way it's supposed to work, though, right? We want to prosecute people that knew what they were doing. And not just because people are drunk. That's not a defense. NGRI doesn't apply when people use drugs. They use alcohol. They knowingly did that. You have to have that mental disease or defect where you cannot put things together. Can't understand, or maybe the bad Scott comes out. You don't want to see the bad Scott, or Leticia, right? In this case. But that's the way the system works. Now, I don't have a statistic in front of me, but I do know that most NGRI pleas do not work. Juries reject them because most of the time it's somebody that's got nothing and they're throwing it out there. And, they go to the attorneys go to the jail and they're like, oh, the demons are talking to me. Oh, really? Tell me more about the demons. Oh, they came to you? Oh, what do they say? And of course, maybe they just ask, when do I get my competency evaluation? So I'm very skeptical of NGRI. I've only done it a couple of times in a pretty long career, handling lots of cases that were very serious. Many of them state court appointed type work where you get lots of people that have mental health issues. And so, I think pretty familiar when you it when you see it kind of thing. I can tell you, we did one just recently where we had one and we did our evaluation. We raised the defense, even though the previous attorneys did not. We turned over everything we were supposed to turn over. And the prosecution's state witness interviewed our client and determined, yep, I agree. NGRI. Client doesn't go to prison. They go off to the state mental health hospital. So, rest assured, it's kind of the way the system works. Let the defense throw it all out there. Let them see what works. Let the jury reject it. Because if the jury doesn't get, an instruction, that's when cases come back. Not to tell too many war stories, so to speak, but that's most cases that I've had come back on appeal. Yes, I've lost. I know it's hard to believe because the judge didn't give me the instruction I wanted. And then it goes up and they say, oh yeah, that Scott guy, maybe he's not as dumb as he looks. You should have given him the instruction, judge. And I always tell judges, hey, judge, I get you don't want to give the instruction, but the standard to get the instruction is simply that a mere scintilla of evidence is presented that would warrant that instruction. And when the judge starts saying, no, I'm not going to give it. Okay, judge, I'm asking for it. And that's going to be the appellate issue. I had a clean trial up to this point, and which means I had nothing to work with. You just gave that to me. I have a case coming back right now, homicide trial. A couple years ago, asked for a non-deadly force instruction. Judge denies it. Coming back. So that's how most cases come back. The judges screw up the law. They don't think the defense is entitled to it. And I tell judges, judge, I understand you don't want to give the instruction. But as a very wise appellate judge told me once, cases don't come back when you give the instruction and the juries can consider it and reject it. No harm, no foul. But when the defendant is entitled to the instruction and you don't give it, we get a free pass. We get a do-over. You really want to be back here in the next 3 to 5 years doing this case all over again? Yep, we can do that. Okay. And that's normally the way it comes back. So hopefully Dr. Lewis shows up tomorrow. The prosecution will cross-examine her till she is exhausted. My guess is it'll go probably a couple of hours, if not most of the day. And the defense will then do a little kind of try to rehabilitate the witness and see what they can do. And then the big ultimate moment. Will Letecia Stauch testify? I don't know. Maybe Maria will show up. What would you think of that? Right? On the stand? Oh, you don't think I have multiple personalities? Well, hold on. I mean, it did kind of almost look like different personalities. Frank, you were watching it all day. I was watching it. Didn't it seem like over the last couple of days, it looks like totally different personalities? I don't know, man. She just looks scary this afternoon. She's just like, yeah. And this looks like something out of a horror movie. So tune in tomorrow. It starts at 9 p.m. Oh, 9 a.m. Sorry, 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning. Right here, Crime Talk. Frank has been great, and everybody has commented that we have had the best feed coming from the courtroom. So just saying. One of the comments here is she had a PhD in education. Dr. Lewis mentioned that it was an online degree and not from a real school. So she didn't give a whole lot of weight to that. And I get it. People have crappy childhoods. All right. We've all been affected by our, either great childhoods or crappy childhoods. It defines us. It creates who we are, but it doesn't give you license to go do terrible things. So we'll just leave it at that. Now, let's move on to the Lori Vallow trial. Now, yesterday's audio. Now, this just shows you the dedicated individual that we have with us here at Crime Talk. When I say Frank is the hardest working man in show business, I mean it. When we were putting up the feed for the Alec Murdoch trial, that started 9:30 or something. It was like 7:30 our time. He had to be here bright and early. Well, last night, what was it, like 10 o'clock, I think, when they finally sent the audio, from the Lori Vallow trial for yesterday. That is, and who got it up? Frank. He literally was like, I finally got it. And I think it was like 10 p.m. last night when it finally went up. And there were people that were like, oh my gosh, they've been checking every 30 minutes to see when it's going up. Well, Frank got it there. And it's not like he was dilly-dallying around. He was waiting just like the rest of us were. Where is it? Where is it? So we'll have to wait and see. All right. So, all right. So, old Lori Vallow trial. They're finally starting to get into the good stuff. They're finally starting to get into, did they actually have somebody that they can say killed Tammy? Did they say who killed JJ Tylee? The best that the prosecution can come up with is tracking phone records. Okay. And I know I don't want the cell phone here. Of course, hopefully you all have your little Crime Talk sticker on there, right? The greatest tracking device ever invented, and everybody does it consensually. All these businesses keep those records for their own data and information. It's not there for a law enforcement purpose, but they do it to make sure their app is working and to see if it's precise and it's work. It's for all the engineering stuff that they do to keep their apps and everything going and tracking. Think about all the stuff you have going on in the background. You got Google, you got Safari, you got your driving app that tells you everywhere you go from point A to point B and tracks all that stuff, always tracking every movement, and figure it can keep track of you within 6 feet of wherever you go. That is what the FBI was doing as it related to Alex Cox and his phone, and a burner phone that just happened to be texting, guess who? Chad Daybell on the burner phone at about the same time he's taking some pot shots at Tammy Daybell. I just don't get it. I don't know. I mean, not that I'm encouraging. Okay, let's just be clear. Disclaimer. I am not encouraging anyone to commit a crime. I am not. Okay. But if you're gonna do one, you may want to leave this little bad boy at home. Who knows? It could give you an alibi. Okay. Just saying. Best thing is, I mean, you truly want to not be detected by anybody. Just don't have any phones or Fitbits. You know, as we heard today, they were trying to get information as it relates to more accurate time of when Tammy Daybell passed away by seeing if there was Fitbit monitoring, but she only had it set up to monitor her footsteps. So, just saying. So, however, though, if somebody wanted to make a bazillion dollars, I've got the greatest app idea. Now, I'm going to share this app idea, and if somebody does it and they implement it, they need to send me royalties on it because I gave them the idea. Okay. How about an app that you put on your phone that blocks all the other GPS location tracking apps, blocks the cell phone tower data that's constantly going on there, right? And what does it do? The app, you can type in exactly where you want to be. And basically it's a blocker for everything else. Now, I don't know how you would do that. I don't know enough about it, but somewhere, someone should say, there's an app for that, Scott. Let me design it and give you royalties on it for the rest of your life. Anonymity will become the new cool thing once again at some point when everybody realizes how the government is tracking them on everything and not being paranoid. But I think we've seen in both the Alec Murdoch trial, the Letecia Stauch trial, the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell trial that will take place. It's the cell phone. It tracks everything. And it doesn't lie. It's that simple. It's good and bad. You know, first thing law enforcement does, I was reading stuff on a homicide case today. They weren't sure who the guy was. First thing they do, they go to Facebook. They take the picture, show it somebody. Is that who it is? Yeah, that's the guy. Public information. They get all the information from Facebook. On the interview forms that they were doing, they're going to, sit down, do an interview with a witness. What's the first thing they ask for? Who's your telephone provider and what's your phone number? Why do you think they want that? Because this little bad boy shows everything. Okay. Now it's also going to be exculpatory in cases where they say, oh, you're at a particular location. And you say, no, I'm not. We got cases right now where they're saying our client was even in the state of Colorado. We're like, we got proof. Phone says that somebody was in a completely different state. Doesn't lie. You can't make that data up unless, of course, somebody's invented the app that I just proposed to somebody out there, but I don't think that's taken place yet. Because if they did, I'd probably know about it. So anyway, so even their Fitbits today, we all heard, I think there was a case where when somebody passed away, they were in a struggle and they went to their Apple iHeart monitor. All that data is collected. Just remember that, ladies and gentlemen. And so in the Lori Vallow case, the coroner testified today as it relates to Tammy Daybell's death. And the cross-examination kind of, really started. It was, and I hate to say it, I hate to criticize. I'm not there, not my case, but just generally, I mean, get questions. It seems obvious, but ask instead of, hey, you were never able to collect. I think Mr. Thomas asked, if this frothy substance that Tammy Daybell's mouth was ever collected. And the doctor's like, well, no, it wasn't really collected and it would have been too late and whatever. Okay, fine. I get that. But hey, doctor, I understand you're saying somebody died. You're saying Tammy Daybell died of strangulation because you believe there were bruises there. But doctor, you can't sit here today under oath and give an opinion as to who killed Tammy Daybell, can you? No, I can't. Right? Get that credibility from that person that has that built-in credibility, the doctor, the pathologist, and have him say, no, I can't say who did it. Nope, I can't say that. And I'm a highly trained expert, and I can't do that. And the defense, no criticism. I don't like criticizing other attorneys. But I just think, God, there's such low-hanging fruit on the tree here that any attorney who's tried a couple of cases in their days could just go and get a couple of quick questions in there to, make you look like you're trying for your attorney, for your client, make your client happy because they think you're fighting for them. And they're easy questions. Doctor, I appreciate your expertise, and you're such an esteemed, wise man. And I appreciate your opinion that she died of strangulation. But the real question is who killed her, correct? And you can't sit here in a degree of scientific certainty and say, who killed Tammy Daybell? Can you, sir? No, I can't. Right? Simple questions. Client's going to love you for it. And jury's like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I get that. And then you got closing argument. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution wants to sit here and say that Lori Vallow killed JJ and Ty Lee. Only evidence that they've shown is that Alex Cox did it. There's no agreement. Nobody said she ordered him to go do it. There's no text messages, not that at least that I've seen, right? And keep it simple. Ladies and gentlemen, and if they don't know exactly what happened, how do they expect you to know what happened? And guess what they call that, ladies and gentlemen, when the prosecution can't say with absolute certainty? It's called reasonable doubt. And therefore, you may not like it. You may not like her. But this isn't a popularity contest, but you got to find her not guilty. I'm just saying. At least the attorneys in the Letecia Stauch case, they're doing what they can. They got a crappy case. And don't get me wrong, we've all been there. If you've done criminal defense long enough, you've had to sit there for the trial where there's been no offer. At least these guys have a defense, okay? And sometimes you got nothing. And you just got to sit there and you take it and you do what you can for your client, and you're getting your head beat in by the prosecution, and the jury probably hates you because why, your client over there. Yeah, but it's about protecting the Constitution. I've said this before and I'll say it again. People ask, why do you do what you do? Well, I believe in the Constitution. And if you or anyone in the legal system allows a guilty client to be railroaded, guess what? The government will start doing it to innocent people as well. It's that simple. And that's why defense attorneys do what they do. And remember, all those cases that make their way to the Supreme Court on criminal issues, criminal law, Miranda, the right to confrontation, Crawford v. Washington, all some little street lawyer down there in the trenches saying, hey, not today, judge. You're not going to screw my client. Well, you may, but I'm going to appeal, and maybe I'll just might win. And it may not take just this, 3 to 5 years. It could take decades, because I'm going to start making this argument over and over again. And maybe you'll realize, hey, you know what? That clause in the Constitution says you have a right to confront them. Is you get to do that, because there were courts that were getting away from that, saying, well, you don't really need the person to come testify. Well, that goes to the complete opposite of what our founding fathers wanted and what they wrote in the Constitution. So just remember that, okay? There was talk today about Tammy, whether she had seizures, and the coroner was like, Dr. Christensen was like, yeah, there's no evidence that she had that. And people usually just don't start having them at 49 years of age. And then they talked about the life insurance. Then they brought up some other experts, or not experts, but other police officers regarding, some conversations, investigation as it relates to Tammy Daybell. Then they get kind of some more of the weird religious stuff. Chat, about his an author and how they want to meet, and just, she just thought Chad Daybell was a rock star, that he was some sort of rock star in this Mormon community, fringe, doomsday world coming to an end type of stuff. And I'm a firm believer, you should have a little bit of a, if your car gets trapped, have maybe a blanket, some water or something in your car, and be able to prepare for yourself. But these guys are like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. And I don't understand. Well, I mean, I get it. Everybody says the world's coming, and it very well may someday. But I'm not, listen, how old am I now? 50. Oh, geez, 53 years old, right? 53 years old. As long as I can remember, they've been telling me the world is coming to an end. We're going to have an ice age. Then we're going to overheat. We're all going to drown. No. Everybody loves a good crisis, ladies and gentlemen. That's how they sell stuff. How do you think Chad Daybell made a living? Trying to scare people. Buy my books. Prepare. I know all the answers. They scare people. What was it somebody said years ago? Don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? Use it for your legislative stuff. Well, it's the same kind of thing when it comes to selling crap, I guess. Chad Daybell was selling his crap, going around saying the world's coming to an end. And then he started to believe his own crap, that he somehow thought that he was going to pick and choose who's going to remain, and that he was the chosen one. And like I said, he started believing his own crap instead of just a guy that wrote some books. Yeah, somebody's latest grace. Crime Talk. Chad and Lori were a cult. Let's call it what it was. It was a cult. That they could pick and choose who had the dark spirits, all that good stuff. I mean, just really, don't get me wrong. I got a pretty good idea. Sometimes doing my job for as long as I have, you can kind of tell the good people that made a mistake, maybe some bad people that need a little time to think about it. And you can truly identify pure evil. Okay. It's just, I don't know. And like I said, portals, I think I've told you this, and I know I sound like I don't want to repeat it, but we've had lots of people that haven't been here before. But I did a case several years ago. You can look it up. It was originally over in Telluride. And, a couple kids died, and it was this little band of merry men, their women and their children, thinking that the universe is going to take care of them. And guess what? Coincidentally, there were portals. Okay. What is it with portals? I would love to see a portal, right? Something right out of science fiction, I guess. But in that particular case, they allegedly didn't eat, and the kids died. And well, then they left them in the car. And let's just say it got really bad from there. And, my client should have been charged because his kids were fine and healthy. And once again, nobody knew how anybody died. They were like mummified in the car. It was bad. And, they couldn't say who did it. I mean, think about when you play the old game of Clue. Remember that? It was Mr. Barber in the library with the candlestick, right? You have to kind of be able to say who was there. When you can't say how it happened, when it happened, where it happened, not a great case. But I don't get it. Like I said, so I've got a little, cult experience here. I got portal experience. Okay. Not because I've ever seen one, but really makes you wonder, it's always fun. So when you ask, so what exactly was going to happen? How did you know when that portal was going to open up? How did you know it was the time? Kind of, it's like that old definition of how do you define pornography? Well, it's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. So I think that's the way it is with portals. Although apparently I think Lori's was in her closet, if I remember correctly from the testimony. And the one lady wanted her own portal, wanted to know how she could build her own portal. Okay. Is it any wonder that the head of the cult, Lori Vallow, one of the head, number 2, so to speak, I guess, had mental health issues? I mean, and trust me, when you have somebody that believes a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean they're crazy. Just because you have what's the word I'm looking for? Well-grounded, deep beliefs. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're crazy, even though the rest of the world does, as long as you can differentiate between what's going on. Trust me on this. Okay. Yeah. Portal in the closet. I wasn't making that up. Put that on your resume. Portal experience. Put that on your resume. There you go. I have experience with cults, portals, and people that, I guess missed the bus when it came to the portal. Could you imagine believing that the world was coming to an end, but you were the only one that knew about it? I mean, do you shout it out to the universe and let everybody know just in case you're right? Or do you keep your mouth shut just in case you're wrong and they don't think you're crazy? I don't know. But once again, you always have to wonder, well, if you guys are so good at predicting the future, I don't think you saw this little twist here in the plot where, you get charged, or is this part of the persecution time, right? You're getting persecuted. Yeah, it's interesting world. Okay. All right. Let's also talk about little Alec Murdoch, and we can talk about some other stuff. And remember, we're going to do our Patreon show tonight. So if you're not a Patreon member, please join us. We'll do it immediately following the show tonight. And we also have the call-in number that you can call in to participate as well. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about because, well, you're a Patreon member. It's your show. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. So remember, Alex Cox, right? Convicted of killing old Maggie and Paul Murdoch down there in Beaufort, South Carolina, down there in the beautiful Low Country. I love that place down there. Well, did I say Alex? Alex Murdoch. Jeez, I'm getting my Alexes mixed up here. Maybe there's a trend here. Sorry. Alex Murdoch, convicted of killing his wife, son at their Moselle property, and then basically trying to cover her up. It didn't quite go well for him, and he got on the stand and testified, which is why Letecia Stauch probably should not testify. Yes, 66.6. Yes, you're right. It's Alex Cox. I was wrong. Not Alex Cox, Alex Murdoch. Anyway, he testified. He was horrific on the stand as well. I thought at first like, oh, this is going to be okay. But then they brought everything in. He had to admit how many times he lied to everybody. Well, guess what? He's got some litigation going on as it relates to the insurance money that was paid out as it relates to Gloria Satterfield. Remember the woman, his housekeeper who helped raise his children, who just happened to die on his front porch on the steps, originally said, oh, the dogs tripped her. Well, now he's saying that the dogs didn't trip her. but I just can't remember how she exactly came into the house and fell, or came up to the house and fell. So that's not good. But he's also saying that his good friend that represented the Satterfield family was not involved in any way. That was Corey. It was a Corey Fleming. Yeah, the alleged co-conspirator, Corey Fleming. It's a good friend from college. But don't worry, he just threw him under the bus. Can you believe it? Alec Murdoch lied. Unbelievable. Sally wants to know, thanks for the super chat. See, it gets my attention. Can the jury find her guilty of conspiracy? Oh, it moved on. Let me see. Let me put this up on the screen here. Can the jury find her guilty of conspiracy, but find her not guilty of the murders? Also, could Chad take a plea agreement after the end of the Laurie's trial? Answer the last question first. If there was a plea offer on the table, nothing to say that there is, but yes, even Chad could have his attorney go to them and say, hey, take death off the table and we will, enter plea life without parole, something to that effect. So can the jury find her guilty of conspiracy, but not find her guilty of the murders? No. In this particular case, the way they charged it, and I don't have it right in front of me, and it's been a little bit, but they've charged her with conspiracy to commit murder as it relates to JJ and Tylee and Tammy. Then there were some other counts as it relates to the theft and collection of money, etc. And there were some aggravating factors as it related to the death penalty. Did they kill people for money, etc. But she's charged with conspiracy. Now, remember, conspiracy is simply an agreement between two or more people to commit an illegal act. Now, the jury is going to have to decide whether there was an agreement, or did Alex Cox and, Chad go do something on their own? Or was she just little Miss Laurie sitting over here in her closet, waiting for the portal to open and deciding good or bad? That's what the jury's going to have to decide. And remember, in most criminal conspiracies, it's not like you send a text or an email saying, hey, let's kill the kids tonight. Let's kill the soon-to-be deceased wife of my new lover. Little three-way text. So there's not going to be a writing where everybody's saying, thumbs up, I'm in, let's do this, I agree. You're not going to find that. So the judge or the prosecution is going to have to prove through circumstantial evidence that there was an agreement. Now, clearly, these people had some very unique but deeply held beliefs that, JJ and Tylee were becoming these dark individuals. So, and I haven't heard anything yet where there was like a code or a wink or a nod or a nudge. Now, of course, Alex spent a lot of time at Laurie's place and said, when they're dark, the dark, the devil's got them. What? There's no testimony saying, gee, Alec, it would be really nice if these kids weren't here. It'd be great. Could you take care of that for me? That's either conspiracy or at a minimum complicity. Now remember, complicity is not a charge. Complicity is a theory of prosecution, right? If you do something, if I walk over there, not that I would, but if I walked over and punch Frank in the nose, I would be a principal. I could be charged with various levels of assault, depending on if I just caused Frank pain or whether I broke his nose, committed a more serious assault, a felony, say. Then you have complicity. And complicity is if you aid, encourage, or assist somebody in the commission of an offense. So if Frank's over there and I really want to punch Frank in the nose, not that I would, but if I did, and there was somebody else standing next to me, it's like, man, you know what Frank needs? He needs to be punched in the nose real hard. And the person goes over and punches Frank in the nose. He's the principal. Not really a conspiracy. I just kind of aided, encouraged him to go do that. So under theory of complicity, I'm guilty just like I went over and punched Frank in the nose. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, there's a lot of those text messages, the planning, the spending. They said Alex Cox, he moved to Rexburg. He spent, they said most of the evenings from about 8 to midnight. He was there. What were they talking about? Who knows exactly? Yes, and there was a lot of planning. People are saying the Google searches. Yes. Scott, I don't think it's a good idea to put that suggestion out there. A punching Frank? Jeez. It's just an example. Just trying to give you an example. She saw. I disagree, Melanie. He actually got the truth of the matter. So that's really what it is. So, but understand, you can be found guilty of conspiracy. You're kind of, when it's conspiracy charge, the prosecution's kind of locked in. If they charged as, they're in a tough charging spot because Alex Cox is dead. And I think the government's all but conceded Alex Cox is the murderer of JJ and Ty Lee, for sure. Mama Pink, justice for Frank. That's funny. And so, it's going to be tough, but more than likely, I think there's enough. This case could go quite easily for the prosecution. The question is, are they the ones that are going to ruin it, so to speak? I don't think, the defense isn't exactly putting up a fight, unless they're just going to get up and say, ladies and gentlemen, there's no evidence that my client killed anybody. You may not want to give her Mother of the Year award, but she didn't murder her children, and there's no evidence that she conspired. All this text messages, all this data, where is it? That's what the defense, hopefully, is going to argue. At least put up a fence. At least make it look like you're trying, for goodness sakes. Because I really just don't. It just drives me. You have a job as an attorney. Okay? Even if you hate your client, and we as the defense attorneys have had clients that you could not stand. You despise them. You couldn't be in the same room with them. But there was no reason, just because you dislike your client, that you cannot go in there and be a zealous advocate for them. At least get up and try to fake some enthusiasm. For God's sakes. My God. Half the battle sometimes is just acting like you freaking care. And I don't even think that the defense attorneys for Lori Vallow, I don't know what they're trying to do. This good old boy, oh, shucks. Maybe there's some grander plan that I'm not seeing here, but I think the client would like to have something in the record, something to argue in closing argument. But that also opens up ineffective assistance of counsel claims. Hell, I could be an expert witness and say, my God, I could have asked, half a dozen questions. And I get it. There's some people you want to get off the stand, no questions. That's a tactical decision, not usually subject to ineffective assistance of counsel claims. It's a strategy decision, tactical decision. Yeah, I did that. Most attorneys wouldn't do it, but guess what? I'm not any other attorney. And it's a tactical decision, and I made it. And guess what? I've won lots of cases over the years by doing not what everybody else was going to do, but doing what they didn't expect me to do. Just saying. All right. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Already an hour. Frank, all right. So we need to let everybody know, come over and be a Patreon if you haven't done so. It's not an exorbitant subscription fee. Come join us. And like I said, we will have you online, and you can call in and we'll talk about anything you want. It doesn't even talk about the law, but more than likely we will. I think Letecia Stauch is going to be a big topic this evening because I think most of our Patreon people have been watching that. And like I said, it was like watching the Hindenburg come crashing down on fire today. Uncivil law. How the hell are you? Haven't seen you in a while. You been busy? Anyway, maybe you can send him a link, Frank, to Uncivil Law. Send him a link for our Patreon or something. So, all right, everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. I appreciate you joining us this evening. Thanks for being here. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, the cross-examination continues of Dr. Dorothy Lewis. She is a Harvard and Yale trained psychiatrist, MD. She's like 80 years old. She's like the grandmother of multiple personality issues. Gonna be interesting. Frank will have the feed up bright and early, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. I'll be watching wherever I am. It's going to be good. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time. All our Patreon family members will see you there shortly.